Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for the I almost said February, March Wednesday webinar. You can get there from here, Pathways to Education After High School. I am Maria McDougall. I'm one of the college access counselors here at FAME, presenting this webinar today, part of our professional development series designed for counselors and access professionals. With me today, I have Myla Tappan, who I'm sure you all know, who is going to wing woman for me. She's going to throw some information in the chat for all of you, as well as monitor the chat and the Q&A feature throughout the session. So please make sure to utilize that throughout. Again, I will ask for input on a couple of places, and so make use of the chat for that. We cannot see or hear you, so if you're enjoying your lunch or you're comfortable, that's okay. We'll be the only ones on camera today. We are going to talk about a whole bunch of different things today to kind of help you guide students through making a plan to earn some kind of credential after high school. So I have, it's sort of a helping them choose their own adventure. And so I grabbed a picture of one of those old choose your own adventure books. And I think I can say that to this crowd, and you all know what I mean. I've made that reference to students in the past, and they sort of look at me puzzled because they don't understand what that is. But I'm sure you all catch the reference. And so we're going to talk about kind of different ways to get to that credential. I'm going to set the scene a little bit by discussing our changing, maybe changed landscape of where things are in terms of workforce development and education. I want to highlight some in-demand careers, some research there, both sort of nationally and at the main level. And then we'll kind of deep dive into the different pathways and credential options that are available. Just to reiterate, I'm sure a lot of you know the options that are available to you and to students, but always a good idea to think through them and consider your students through the lens of multiple ways to get to the end goal. We'll talk about kind of making the plan and helping students figure out sort of the structure of how they're going to plan for their future. And then we'll do some closing thoughts and Q&A. So a lot of stuff is happening. There's tons of, like, you're hearing the phrase great resignation. The pandemic impact has been substantial for women as well. You know, so the great resignation is people sort of leaving the workforce and not returning to it because they're realizing for whatever X, Y, and Z, there's no more flexibility from working from home or because of wages. And certainly women who carry a lot of the home caregiver responsibilities are feeling like there's no way they can return to work. College enrollment was, you know, hugely impacted by the pandemic. You know, fall of 2021 was pretty bleak in that regard. So a lot of things really shifted during the pandemic. I think there were smatterings of this happening before the pandemic, and a lot of it was just exacerbated by, okay, everybody's working from home or out of work or unemployed or trying to reevaluate kind of what they're going to do from here on out. That's particularly true in some of Maine's industries that are public facing. So we'll talk about that a little bit later, but just, this is not news to any of you, but really, obviously, things are different and motivations and careers even are shifting as a result of the pandemic, which we are coming up on. You know, we left I think our last day in the office at FAME was like the 12th. So we're like right there in terms of another anniversary of this pandemic, although I think we are, fingers crossed, kind of moving through back to some kind of pre-pandemic normalcy. But lots of information that I'm sure you all have been bombarded with over the last 2 years. Lots of remote options, and I keep seeing posts about folks, you know, not wanting to return to the office, and certainly some businesses are being amenable to that, and others are saying, no, we need you back here, and that's not a fit that's going to work for some people. So just a lot going on there. And as we think about sort of the remote work environment, later I'm going to talk about MicroCredentials, and that all kind of goes together, right? And so self-directed types of online learning that kind of fit the remote work model. I wanted to kind of share some data because I'm nothing if not a geek for a chart from the Maine Department of Labor. So this is from, I've linked the footnote there with the source that this is from. And Mila's going to put in the chat for those of you that are also data hounds like Mila and I, and you want to look at some of these other charts. And there's some really cool data filtering you can do on that website. I've spent time there probably more than I need to sometimes, just looking at trends and things. So feel free to explore that. But here is a graph of net job losses by sector in the last 2 recessions. And so, you know, specific to COVID-19 and then like the Great Recession of the 2008 era. So obviously, it is no surprise that because of COVID-19, our leisure and hospitality, tourism, hospitality, leisure was the biggest hit. I think that comes as a shock to no one. Obviously also retail. Those are huge industries for Maine. I live in Naples, which is a summer town, Naples Bridgeton area. And there were a few restaurants that got, you know, that couldn't survive. And then I have other friends that live kind of in touristy towns, I would say, who, you know, lost some of their favorite places because of the pandemic. So I think as things are slowly starting to return, these industries in particular in the state are going to be, they already are hiring and really looking to fill and make up for lost time. So I just wanted to kind of share that so that you all have a sense of where things are, although I'm sure it's not surprising to anyone listening. And then here's just from a financial perspective, the impact. This was from sort of that late summer of 2020 to late summer of 2021. Just how difficult it was financially. You know, I think it's clear that families of color were more deeply impacted, but 26% of adults had trouble with usual household expenses during the pandemic. You know, I think we have always talked about at FAME the importance of emergency savings and budgeting and those kinds of personal financial wellness things. But if the pandemic taught us anything, it really hammered that home, the importance of maintaining a household budget and having those emergency expenses. And I think all of us felt some kind of sting of financial burden during the pandemic. So as you're working with students, you know, reassuring them that if they felt that and are still feeling that, they are certainly not alone. And the finances are going to be a big consideration as they start to return to the workforce or shift or change or find their new pathway. And what's interesting is, you know, students that are maybe your high school grads that are coming right out, they're going to finish this spring, you know, they're coming out, they're graduating into a very different socioeconomic climate than maybe they would have had there not been the pandemic. So they might have other additional concerns as well. So just things to think about as you're working with students, to sort of say like this, lots of things have been impacted. You're not alone here, but there's still options for finding something that's going to make you feel financially comfortable and meet education and workforce goals. Somehow, again, approaching year 3 of a pandemic, college enrollment dropped. A lot of us spent significant time working and schooling from home, or working and, you know, trying to manage homeschooling for longer than I think any of us maybe wanted to. We've got the She Session, which is that sort of exodus of women from the workforce, and super high inflation. I don't know about all of you, but you know, between the grocery store prices and heating oil prices, everything feels way more expensive. So there are some permanent and lasting changes here from the pandemic, but things are also continuing to evolve and change, and employers and educational institutions are rising to the challenge of getting us back into some sense of normalcy and kind of rolling with the times. You know, lots of places that previously were like, absolutely not, no one works from home, have now shifted to a much more flexible model. So things are in flux, but there have been some changes there. So just to kind of set the scene on where things are as people are starting or restarting or shifting careers. So the big question is, given all of that, how do we have a future planning conversation in this current landscape? I think it's slightly easier now because we're sort of hopefully on, I don't even like to say it out loud, but hopefully on the tail end of the pandemic that we knew when it very first started. If anyone has stories or comments about sort of how they've had to have this conversation with students, throw that in the chat. I'd love to see, and look for others to see kind of how you're explaining that, and how you're helping students, especially those that maybe feel really stuck because there's a pandemic. What do? I lost my job. I have to change my job. I'm taking advantage of this fact that I don't have to do my job right now to do the career I've always wanted to do. You know, how are you approaching those conversations? I do see the chat bubble, so I just want to check with Mila really quick to see if there's comments or questions that we want to address before I dive us in a little further.
Nope, we're good to go, Maria. No specific questions right now.
As you're thinking of things or examples of students that you're working with, please share those in the chat. I know a lot of our adult ed partners have, you know, intake planning and things that they've always done, but I'm curious if there are different strategies for those types of conversations for future planning, given what we've all just lived through. So again, here's some data from the Center for Workforce Research and Information. They have all kinds of really cool charts and stuff out here, as I said. So, oops, that flipped quick. So here you can see in Maine, sort of the high wage in demand jobs, and this is by education level. So you can see there the sort of color scheme. This is education level required. So just as a, you know, the general and operations managers, it's a little bit fuzzy in terms of managers of what, but you sort of see, you know, tractor trailer truck drivers, registered nurses, carpenters, retail. You know, these are pretty substantial in terms of, you know, minimum level required. Certainly we want to get students beyond that, but you see down there in the purple are teachers. I think there was a lot of turnover with teachers throughout the pandemic as well. And then there is, you can sort of filter this through if you want to look at just certain types of education levels or things like that. So as I kind of zoomed in, so you can see a little bit more closely. But the idea is that, you know, these are typically the occupations that are listed as in demand, even in a non-pandemic circumstance. But I think, you know, more and more now as a result of what we just all lived through. I did check on a couple of other sites just for clarity's sake in terms of growth, job growth. So the 10 fastest growing jobs in Maine, you know, 6 out of 10 are healthcare related. I think also that is not surprising given what happened with our healthcare workers in the state and of course nationally. And nearly all of these require some kind of education or training beyond high school. So while there's certainly ways to get in the door in the jobs I showed you before, and that there are some that, you know, at the minimum requirement is a high school diploma, obviously earnings potential generally goes up the more education you have. But in general, in terms of job growth, these top 10 here definitely require some kind of education or training beyond high school. I thought number 5 was interesting, taxi drivers, that when I read it, I didn't know if it like accounted for like Uber and Lyft, and I don't know if that falls under like a taxi thing, but I thought that was really interesting. Obviously that was a highly impacted industry as well. Folks just weren't going places, and I think we're nervous about being in a car with somebody they didn't know. So number 5 kind of, oh, that's interesting, but it makes sense as people are returning to traveling and dining and those kinds of things, that driver jobs would be in demand and fast growing. If anything's surprising anybody there or seems interesting, or you have comments, again, please feel free to throw that in the chat. So when thinking about in-demand careers, you know, sometimes I hear from students, it's sometimes my adult learners, sometimes it's the high school students we're working with. You know, I want the one that's like going to pay me the most and has the most job growth and is the most in demand. But there are considerations, you know, demand and availability are going to vary by region, even within our state. So, you know, your hospitality jobs and things like that, tourism, leisure is obviously, you know, Maine as a whole is known for that. But of course, specific regions of the state, availability and demand is going to vary. Many employers are offering hiring incentives. I see signs all over the place, signing bonuses and education support, which we'll talk about a little later. And there are right now a record number of job openings available as things are starting to bounce back. And here's my right? People are so this great resignation, right? People are holding out for jobs with better wages. And most openings require some kind of post-secondary training, right? So there's all these openings and all these different ways to get there into the workforce and to seek out education, but there might be some holdouts for different reasons. And I think especially with, people want competitive wages and competitive benefits, and they may have a little stopgap if what is required for education isn't available to them or hasn't been in the past, and they have to proceed down that pathway. So here's how we kind of pave this, and you as people who support students can kind of help people navigate through getting to that end point, whatever that looks like, is identifying the entry point. Is it somebody that feels like they're ready to go right into like a post-secondary education program or training? Or are they going to go to work? Or are they going to continue working? So maybe they've been working throughout the pandemic, and there was a time when sometimes with hazard pay and things like that, wages were pretty good and they don't want to sacrifice that, right? So, okay, so what is the entry point and what are the current trends? So we talked about some of that. And then considering kind of a holistic approach to helping them figure out their short and long-term goals. So, is there something in the short term that you've always wanted to complete, or a credential that you need, or you think you can move up in this particular area, but you haven't been able to do that, and now's a great time? What are your barriers? So I think as folks who work with adult learners, especially, there's the added things of maintaining a household, potentially raising children, all of those things that are impacting adult learners. And so kind of looking at those barriers, you identified the entry point. Okay, what are the potential pitfalls and how do we kind of overcome those? And just that there is no one size fits all plan. So I think that's really the key, as each student, client, person that you're working with is going to be a little bit different. They're going to have those different barriers and different goals, and then helping them figure out which pathway works for them without comparing them to, without letting them compare themselves to others or trying to fit them in boxes, really going to be important. So let's kind of talk about the straight to post-secondary education pathway. Those of you that have joined us for adult learner sessions in the past, some of this is going to feel super familiar, but obviously we know that there's different kinds of pathways to different kinds of credentials that we would consider post-secondary. So there's certificate programs, associate degree programs, bachelor's and master's degrees, trade programs of 1 year or less. I'm going to talk a lot more about those a little bit later. Associate degrees and certificates, bachelor's degrees, so I might just kind of bang through all of those really quick, or, some combination, right? So kind of starting with the certificate and then adding a year to get the associates, and then 2 years finishes the bachelor's. Maybe a person does the 2 years at a community college and then 2 years at the 4-year institution to get that bachelor's. Maybe they're plowing through, or they're slow and steady, tortoise style, taking years in between and gaps and things. So there's multiple ways to kind of get to those post-secondary credentials. And then I can't stress enough that I still actually the other day had this conversation, was with a parent, but just sort of saying, I don't know if community college is right, because isn't it viewed less than a 4-year college? And I have to say, no, it's not. So really just reminding students that lots of pathways exist. Community college is a great pathway. We have, 7 campuses that are super affordable. Many of the courses, programs are transferable into 4-year institutions. There's so many programs options, including the skilled trades that can lead directly to good jobs. And there's a ton of free offerings. I think probably, I feel like every other moment I hear about a new free program that's offered through one of our community colleges. So here's like a list, and I will again send this out to folks afterwards. So you'll have this chart here, but you can see these are all no cost training programs offered by Maine's community colleges. So I think that's one way that community colleges have answered the call. So it's a little bit of both, right? It straddles the line of like, specific workforce training, but it's a credential being earned at a community college. So just lots of different options there to talk to students through, I was surprised at the sort of the Amazon Web Services training. I'm like, that's not even a thing I would have thought you could do. But all kinds of different options exist through our awesome community college system. There are some benefits to kind of starting with college. So I think of it like the board game life, right? So people will, do you start with the college first or do you start with career first, right? So it can be a direct line to like a recognized credential of value. There's lots of program options. Many of them have internships or experiential learning. There's the experience of college life, if that's really important to the person. For most, if not all, financial aid exists to help meet the costs. And in general, although not always, you're more likely to get a better paying job. Miley, you came off mute, so I'm guessing you've got something you want to share or a question?
Yeah, I was just at a point that works for you. I just wanted to mention that Jess mentioned that there are 7 institutions, but in reality, the community colleges have even more than 7 locations,
yes,
more than 7 campuses. So, yes, there are so many great opportunities throughout the state for people to access their education through the community colleges without having to travel that far, which obviously with everything that's going on in the price of gas, that's a good thing. Plus online, obviously that's an option. The other thing I wanted to share is you had asked people to talk about the conversations they were having with students.
Yeah.
And Rachel Upton shared a great conversation that she's having, and it's so positive. And I think, this time it's hard sometimes to be as positive as we'd like to be, but she said her conversations are centered around the fact that students are graduating from high school and college at one of the best times possible, especially if they attended a CTE and have earned credentials and stuff. And I think that's a really, really good point that there are so many opportunities currently available that didn't exist before the pandemic. So I think that's a great way of taking kind of a challenging time and saying, hey, here's a really great silver lining, lots of opportunities.
Yes, that's great. Thank you for sharing that story, Rachel. And I think that that's huge. And, finding the positive spin, I think throughout all of this is really helpful, right? And where is this? Okay, yeah, it was a pandemic, but, there's more job openings than ever. And we're going to talk about some of those some of the other benefits of that as well. And I did also want to mention, not to leave out our humane system folks, but there's also lots of remote and satellite campuses throughout the university humane system. Lots of, I think, as frustrated as we all were with remote learning, especially if you had a middle schooler in your house who had to do online schooling, but certainly I think for colleges as well, it really expanded the opportunity for folks to learn online and to become comfortable with that. It has existed pre-pandemic, but I think institutions have really stepped up their game in terms of delivering a quality education through online pathways. And I think that, we talk about silver linings. That's one that has really shut down a barrier. I think we all know in Maine, transportation before the pandemic, before these fuel prices went crazy, was often a challenge. And so we've kind of helped narrow, I wouldn't say totally shatter, but narrow that barrier, given the fact that there's been a lot more access to remote learning than there previously was, and higher quality delivery. So if the entry point is a career, and when I say entry point, I mean, this might be a high school grad or somebody that kind of maybe took a couple during the pandemic was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to just stay home and not do anything, and is looking to restart. Some of those folks that we often worry are falling through the cracks. I also kind of mean, what's the goal? Like, do they sort of know themselves and they're either currently working and they're like, I'm going to go to work first and then figure out what I need to do and then get a credential? Or do they like, I want to get the credential out of the way and then look for a job? So that's kind of the approach I've taken with this choose your own adventure format here. So this gift made me laugh. I'm good at stuff, right? So our resume. So we really want to encourage, if they're like, okay, I'm working, or I want to continue, or I need to continue working, certainly as adult learners in particular, like it's really difficult to just be like, okay, I'm going to quit my job and go to school full time, right? So if the career pathway is kind of what is going to work, and then education kind of flows within that, again, thinking about goal, like what's the end goal, what's the dream job, what's the high end sort of, if you could do it, and what that look like. So encourage the goal setting, identify and highlight skill sets. So there's tons of like skills assessments that can be done online. I'm going to send some resources, of course, after the session, but really helping them identify, especially if this is someone who's like working but doesn't have necessarily a career goal or an education goal, help them figure, okay, so let's figure out what you're good at. Let's do some inventories and see kind of where you fit in terms of jobs that might be good for you based on skills and interests. Of course, helping them create a resume or tweak an existing resume, researching those career pathways based on level of education, demand. So visiting some of those sites we talked about in the beginning, or Career One Stop, great resource. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later as well. And helping them identify employers who offer tuition assistance and professional development opportunities, so take advantage of those. There's so many. I'm going to show you a slide in a second that shows you how many there are, but Career One Stop is a great exploratory tool. So I grabbed nurse practitioner from this because that was on our hot list of in-demand job growth. So what's great about Career One Stop is you can kind of get a, what do they do, career description, what the outlook is of jobs in the future. You can research salaries here. So you'll see there, like kind of halfway down the page, what level of education do people have? What are the earnings potentials? Do you need licensing? All of that. So you can really do some deep dive career exploration through Career One Stop. There are other sites and things, but this is, I think, one of our favorites in terms of how comprehensive the information really is. Then I think phase 2 is kind of looking at different pathways. So if someone is currently working on something, recognizing that there is usually a pathway to some kind of advanced role within that particular field or industry that generally comes with higher earnings potential. So, I grabbed, like, this is from Zippia, a fast food worker. Okay, so there might be, are they working in the warehouse or the trucking or that kind of thing? Are they kind of on the front lines? And how can they move up? What's the sort of high end management level? And then you can deep dive in this site about kind of, okay, so if we're going to go up to the management level, do we need education? Do we need training? Somebody like a food service director probably needs all the food safety trainings and those kinds of things. So kind of looking at what are you doing currently, and exploring like what might a pathway look like towards management or towards the next level. I did this a session actually at the Maine Correctional Center in Windham pre-pandemic, so whatever year that was, and we just kind of looked at different pathways. And so I said, it was for the men's side at the time, and I said, okay, yell out a job, and someone said landscaper, and I said, okay, let's look. And then sort of working mowing lawns, and then it became like, if you move up and you earn more education, landscape architect might be the end goal, right? And so just talking about the different career trajectories within whatever field or job people are doing, I think can really help with the goal setting and help figure out how to weave education into a career pathway. So I have a lot of fun on Zippia. They have, different things about specific college majors as well, and careers by majors. And so lots of things to do there. And so as you're working on career prep with students, encourage preparation and training. So this is particularly true for someone maybe shifting fields completely. I think some folks that maybe lost a job as a result of the pandemic certainly said, okay, I guess that's a sign that now's the time to do the thing I've always wanted to do, that never had a chance to. And so I think that was silver lining for some people, right? And really just encouraging preparation and training. And so Maine's career centers and Maine adult education have great offerings for both prep and career offerings. So, if you are somebody, somebody that maybe really needs to brush up on their math, send them to adult education, that sort of thing. Lots of training available for throughout our career centers, and both main career centers and main adult education have sites all over the place, and also answered the call of needing to adapt and do online offerings and things like that. So encourage that, figure out, again, those interest assessments, and really hammering in the transferable skills discussions. I think especially for those folks that, again, either kind of are wavering a little bit and like, now what do I do? And the future feels uncertain and I'm not totally sure what I'm good at. Okay, like if you're a parent managing a household, there's lots of transferable skills to lots of jobs that are transferable from being a parent to working in a particular field. So having those conversations, and then talking about pay and benefits, and thinking about what's important for those goals for people and what's available. Generally, earnings potential, is greater with advancement in a particular field or industry, and with additional credentials. Again, not always the case, but commonly, and that's usually the case. Making sure health insurance is offered, and finding those opportunities so that even if they're making a good living wage, they're not being saddled by health care that they cannot afford. And again, considering the tuition assistance reimbursement options, okay, is this place you're working, are they going to help you get to that next level or help you earn a credential? Here's a small list of both local and nationwide retailers and things that offer tuition assistance. Generally pretty generous from what I've seen. And really just thinking, and for many of these, you really only have to be working part-time to partake in tuition assistance opportunities. So I think it's really, that's one of the first questions I ask when I'm working with my adult learners. I'm like, okay, where are you working? And do they offer tuition assistance? Because that's really going to help with the affordability pieces of planning credential, a job change, anything like that. There are other options that are sometimes, maybe more self-directed. So especially if you've got somebody who is really good with time management and prefers to just kind of do it at their own pace and do it alone. There's really been an uptick. I think, again, the pandemic kind of helped this in micro-credentialing, stackable credentials. So there's lots of different options for that. Again, taking offerings through adult education that translate directly to workforce opportunities. It might be the time that somebody develops a small business, right? Or opens up a family business, takes advantage of those opportunities for entrepreneurship. Again, not necessarily going to translate into a credential, but something that can reach an educational goal. And maybe it's a little bit from everywhere, right? So maybe it all kind of overlaps, right? So some from columns A, B, and C. It's really about the individual that you're working with and figuring out what's the long-term goal and how do we get there. I want to talk about micro-credentials a little bit. The Humane System did this really cool summit on micro-credentials. So if you want to learn kind of more about their offerings, Milo will put a link in the chat for that. But essentially, they are little mini classes and programs. You might have heard of digital badging. So here's like a really beautiful, colorful collection of what that might look like. But these are generally industry specific, or sometimes even like program specific, like you can get a micro-credential in Microsoft PowerPoint, right? So depends on the industry or the area of interest, but this is one of those ways that people can take advantage of skills they already have and stack smaller groups of credentials into a breadth of experience that can translate into a job, a better paying job, advancement within their own field. So this is kind of how they're developed. I'm not going to spend a ton of time going through this. You'll have it in the slides, but essentially, this is not just like, I think when we first started learning about the MOOCs, the massive open online courses, there was this hesitation of like, who's doing what? And is this reputable? And, even faculty from places like MIT and Harvard and all these places were jumping on the bandwagon, but there really is, in terms of how far we've come with this, lots of kind of thought and development behind the scenes in terms of developing some of these smaller micro credentials. So the UMaine system has done a fantastic, they have like a whole center now through their student success windows for talking about micro credentialing and giving this as an opportunity to kind of earn credentials, generally very affordably. A lot of those massive open online courses are free or little cost. And it's kind of a self-directed, do at your own pace option. I think more and more people are jumping on that bandwagon. And the other thing to consider is that if you've got someone who's very dedicated to an industry, already working in a particular industry, you know, maybe there's an industry specific credential that they can get. So a while back, I went on good old Wikipedia and I found this great list of like pretty much every occupation field has some kind of industry specific license, certificate, credential that you can earn. How you do that, where you do that is obviously going to vary. But if you've got someone who says, you know, I'm interested in accounting, but I don't know if like I want to get an accounting degree, or I already have an accounting degree, but I'd like to get maybe some stackable things on top of that. Look for the agency specific, industry specific credentials and ways to earn that. So I just grabbed, you know, accounting and finance, hospitality, tourism, and recreation, right, as common main areas of interest, and human resources. And so like you can get from the American Hotel and Lodging Association Educational Institute a certified hospitality administrator credential, right? So we all like kind of letters at the end of our names, right? There's pretty much certificates and pathways for lots of different industries. So when we talk about kind of what are you going to do conversations, there are ways to kind of earn credentials without feeling the pressure of attending college as some people think of it. And that can be really beneficial for some folks that are just feeling like maybe that pathway is not for them. So there's way more of this. The list was like huge. So I just grabbed these. So kind of fun to play around in there and be like, there's pretty much some kind of certificate or license for just about everything out there. There are some, again, benefits to kind of starting with career. So work while earning a credential can help you pay for it, which reduces debt, which is something I think we all really like the sound of. As you're working, there's the potential for employer tuition assistance, or maybe scholarships. You can get stackable small professional credentials that can translate to other opportunities for work. And then real life work experience that can translate into furthering your career. So I think millennials in particular, speaking as one myself, but certainly folks that are graduating and entering the workforce are like, well, it says I need 3 to 5 years of experience in order to get this job, but I can't get a job because I'm brand new. How am I supposed to get the experience, right? That catch-22. And so I think, you know, considering conversations about transferable skills and building some of those micro credentials and professional development things it is kind of experiential learning that can translate into moving that career forward. Anything we need to highlight in chat or Q&A?
No. No, sorry. So, my was delaying for a bit. No, we're all set for right now.
Okay,
thank you.
Great. So I want to talk about making the plan with students. Just kind of how do we structure this? How do we frame this out? I think the first part is really helping students identify their short and long-term goals. And for lots of reasons, I think career goals are often easier for folks to pinpoint. So okay, what's the dream job? And then kind of using that to, I always say like reverse engineer the educational pathway. Okay, so if the goal is to be, you know, we'll throw out nurse practitioner from our list, right? Okay, so that's the long-term goal. What do you already have for credentials and all that? Let's figure out, okay, where are we currently at in terms of ability, interest, and current credentials? What is the required education to get there? And then how are we going to let's make a plan for how we get to that next educational level. So I think really setting up the goals and mapping it out, like writing it down, whether that's paper or electronic, but giving them some kind of deliverable, a takeaway that is, okay, here's your plan, right? So that it's clear and written down, and breaking it into bite-sized sort of small goals that are easily, check off the box. I also just grabbed a screenshot of our plan publication, kind of geared towards, post-secondary planning for high school graduates. But there's a lot of really good stuff in here in terms of ways to kind of think through interests, planning for, direct to the post-secondary credentials, evaluate those kinds of things. We also have the adult learner guide on our website. And so if you're interested in downloading or ordering any of those for free, Mila will put the link for that on our website, but we've tried to create some resources that will help with the planning part, to keep everything organized and to make sure that you're not missing any considerations when you're working with students. I also cannot stress enough that making sure a financial plan is part of the process, no matter which sort of entry point a student is going to use. So whether that's going to school, changing jobs, starting a new credential program, getting the financial house in order is really, really important for all of those steps. And I often say, especially to sort of younger adults, like, you can have a job and be making tons of money, but if you're not sure how to manage that well, you're not going to be necessarily any better off than if you weren't working at all. So we have a great financial wellness section of our website that includes links to things like iGrad, which is a great set of tools and calculators and mini courses that students can take for free to better their financial wellness. I've learned a lot from taking those. Some of the ones on investing in particular, because that's admittedly something I know nothing about. So just make sure that one of the considerations when planning for these pathways with students is the financial plan, both how are they going to pay for whatever credentialing they're going to do, and how is their household budget, how is their lifestyle impacted, and what is the backup plan financially. It's also important to consider semantics. I think it's very easy to get caught up in words. And I think some folks really say college, right? So my title is College Access Counselor. I talk about more than just 2 and 4 year college programs, right? But if my title were post-secondary planning access counselor is too long, right? But just thinking about when you're working with your students, and you know them certainly better than I do, but just kind of tweaking your language and thinking about, instead of the open-ended question of like, what do you want to do? Or what do you want to be when you grow up? Spin it on its head and say, let's figure out a plan for your future. Let's be proactive, make it, verb-based instead of waiting for them to answer with a noun, right? So thinking about the way that you're framing this conversation, because, what do you want to do? I don't know, right? It's going to be a common answer. Or I want to do 6 different things. And it's like, okay, let's sit down and figure out what the plan is for your future. And I think incorporating the word like future planning, instead of, planning for college or planning for your career, let's talk about what all that looks like, because they generally go together, right? There's some kind of education and training required for almost every job. And so just framing how you say things, I think, can make a real difference. And that's true person to person. Of course, remind students to reevaluate periodically. Plans change, life happens, pandemics happen. Nobody saw that one coming. So just reminding students that things are going to happen. You've written down that plan, you stick it on the wall. It might look really different after the first X number of months or however long it's going to take. So just reminding them that plans change and it's okay to reevaluate. You should reevaluate. And if something's not working or it's not the right fit, to revisit and go back to the planning stages in the beginning. And just celebrating the small victories. Hey, we got that one credential. Great, let's keep going, or let's reevaluate. I think really just encouraging students to do what is going to work best for them. My favorite analogy is like the MyFitnessPal app, right? Where you like put in all the things that you eat and you put in all the exercise you do, and it keeps track of everything. That's supposed to help you like maintain healthy lifestyle. And I can do that for like 2 weeks, and then I get really bored and I get tired of it. That does not work for me. I'm like, put a microchip in my arm. I want to set it and forget it. I know myself, right? So thinking about finding tools and plans that work for the individual student, and framing that within the fact that things have really changed since the pandemic, and there are some benefits, as we discussed, in terms of more opportunities than ever, better access to online learning that's really high quality and those kinds of things, and then just being cheerleader for them, helping them celebrate those small victories. There is no wrong way to do this. Okay, so again, helping them find a way that works for them, but just, I think people are feeling like they have to fit within a certain box, or they're like, well, I should have done that when I was 18. I should have gone to college instead. And, now it's too late, or those kinds of things. Like, encouraging them, there's no wrong way to do this. Whatever your entry point is, if that works for you, that's great. That's working. That's success. Encourage making a plan that includes school and work. So even if they're like, well, I'm not interested in going to college. Well, okay. But if this is your workforce goal, there's probably some kind of learning that's going to need to happen, right? And then once they realize they've done that, or maybe they did it already and didn't even realize, that feels like it opens more doors. Exploring pathways, considering family circumstances, and helping them help themselves. So encouraging them to make use of the resources available. Go to your adult ed, go to the Career Center, reach out to FAME for financial aid help, reach out to FAME for personal financial wellness, making sure that they can advocate for themselves and make use of their own resources, I think will really help in terms of planning long-term and identifying what is going to work for each individual student. I wanted to leave enough time for questions, so I'm glad I did, or comments, or questions about anything else, anything from the chat. I'm going to bring that up here, but I wanted to say thank you for, I know that I peeped the list of who we have, and you're all doing a lot of this work already, so it probably feels really familiar. And thank you for the flexibility I know that many of you have had to deal with throughout the pandemic, and kind of reevaluating how you're helping Maine students. But anything we want to share, or anything anyone has any thoughts or questions about, we'll hang for a few. Otherwise, thank you so much. All right, just gonna hang for a bit. Again, feel free to put things in the chat or Q&A, but thank you so much. I will be sending a follow-up with the links that were shared, as well as the presentation slides. You have some of that available. Again, and you'll have the websites for the Maine labor statistics that I said. So if you are a nerd like me and you want to spend some time deep diving into some of those charts and things like that, you'll have the opportunity to do that. So thank you so much for joining me today, and enjoy the rest of your day.